first thing is that I think some athletes are inherently much better fat burners than others. The ratio of fats to carbs being burnt at sub-threshold intensities can be very different depending on how they were raised, what diet they ate, how much exercise they did growing up, all these sort of things. So it's like most things that I have to answer, carb manipulation is not I don't like to have one size fits all approach. You tend to find pretty quick when you train with people, you can almost see when they're really bad at burning carbs. Obviously, you can do some metabolic testing, which is way better way of finding out whether that's something that needs to be worked on. Carb manipulation, I really like it for people who are time limited. I know there's coaches out there who's like, oh, you don't need to do it. You just do 6-hour rides. And I'm like, yes, that is good. And 6-hour rides do work better than carb manipulation. Nothing promotes fat burning ability like long sessions over 3 hours. But I live in a real world where I understand age group athletes. And for them, I would say for 15 hours or less, there is still, I believe there's some benefit to doing some 75, 90-minute sessions where you might do it on low to zero carb for much of that, for an easier session. And then I still think you've got to be careful not to be in too much of a caloric deficit overall. So you might still have some protein or fats before that or during, depending on what you had the day, what the training was like the day before, what you've got going on after that. So a lot of it's context based. And yeah, I wouldn't recommend too much carb deprivation for people doing sort of like 25 to 30 hours of training with lots of intensity, unless they're in like a really easy base phase. And the easy way to think of it sometimes is, okay, what energy system do I want to use in this session? So if you're doing an easy zone 2 session, you're like, I'm going to be predominantly burning fats. I want to be. So I can probably do that relatively fasted. Fasted is probably not a good word. I can do it relatively low carb. And, you don't want to be obviously too low on protein throughout the day and things like that. But that's okay. And then if you look at an interval session, you're like, well, this is going to be very glycolytic. I'm going to need to utilize my glycogen stores to really get to the intensity that I need. That's a session where you probably want to have eaten some carbs the night before to make sure you've got adequate glycogen loading, but also so that you're keeping blood sugar levels pretty high throughout the session. So yeah, different approach for different people. There are some good benchmarks. If you can't get through a 3-hour ride without having to stop at a bakery, like the first couple of years of my career, I'd be like an hour in and just be hunting carbs, and Steve was not that dissimilar. Then it's probably it's almost certainly something you need to work on. And that's either through doing more volume, easy aerobic volume, or you can manipulate the carbs a little bit more.
Or an hour and a half in and you're like, can I get 2 pies, chocolate donut with sprinkles, and a large mocha?
Yeah.
Then you ride with real cyclists and you start drinking real coffee.
It was interesting. Like the last training camp that our group did in Victor Harbour, and I think we got on the bike that early that 4 hours into the ride, it's still like 9:45 in the morning, and we hit a bakery. It definitely feels like lunch, and we're all throwing back meat pies, and it's definitely still breakfast.
That was before 2 hours into the ride. I remember going, all right, we got another effort, and everyone was already eating at the bakery. I was like, what's everyone doing? Aren't we doing more? So we skipped that effort. We just ended up doing a bakery tour as we usually do as our group.